In Revelation 8, look at verse 3. It says, "Then another angel stood having the golden censer. He came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar." The prayers of all the saints. Remember I told you a few days back that God collects all of our prayers? They're in these bowls. We saw that in chapter 5 and verse 8. And then here in chapter 8 and verse 3, they are scooped up, and with the offerings that are coming from the presence of God in the angel's hands, it's almost like they throw the prayers out, and they are answered by these judgments. See, we have been praying for the Lord to right wrongs and to help the oppressed and to punish the evildoers, and he doesn't do it. He waits. So what are you supposed to do? God's listening to all those prayers. He's keeping track of it. He'll answer them in his perfect time. It's time to pray. But when he starts acting, that's these trumpets of doom. When God responds, it's time to flee. And that's the last few verses of chapter 8. God strikes the environment that mankind protects. It says in verse 5 that the angel took a censer, and there were noises and thunders and lightnings and earthquakes. And the first trumpet sounds in verse 7, and hail and fire mingled with blood were thrown on the earth, and a third of all the trees was burned up, and all the green grass. That means all the photosynthesis is deeply impacted. That cleanses, takes the CO2 out, the whole process of what we need for life. Most likely there are volcanic eruptions from the quake, water, steam, ash upward, comes back down as hail. Eruptions may ignite the forest, a third of all the trees. Then verse 8, we have an extinction-level event. Second angel sounded something like a great mountain burning with fire. It sounds like an asteroid. Was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea becomes blood. And it strikes the oceans, devastates a third of all ships, perhaps a tsunamic tidal wave. God either turns the oceans to blood or lets the normal process of red tide poison the oceans. Bonnie and I were ministering down south in Florida when the red tide came in, and we would walk along the beach, and you would see every creature gasping, dying on the shore, from the smallest, and the longer red tide went until dolphins, porpoises were beaching. They were dying from the red tide, and every fish and every creature in between. And God shows what he can do with the oceans. What's interesting is there's a new study, remember, with knowledge increasing, NEOs, near Earth objects. This is a picture one. Last year, asteroid Florence passed by, and NASA showed it was the largest near-Earth object ever approaching. And this was the headlines on that day. It's coming tonight. If that thing would have come into our atmosphere, it would have looked very much like what I just read. And the solar stabilities, the fourth trumpet, starting, look at verse 12. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened, and a third of the day didn't shine, likewise the night. And basically, God shows us something. Basically, the star that I just read about could be a comet that strikes the atmosphere and spreads poison. The solar power getting hit, God the Son, who ignited the sun on the fourth day of creation, now dials them down a third. It says a third of all the luminescence declines. That would have horrible implications. This dramatic temperature drop would prompt fearsome weather that Luke 21 reminds us of, and it would devastate the fragile life of plants and animals and people. Now the Lord dials them back up because the sun begins to burn in chapter 16. But just before all that happens, that's when God sends those 144,000 evangelists.